Israel's internal political crisis is reaching a boiling point. As the occupation army continues its brutal assault on Gaza, Israeli opposition figures are turning against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, describing him as a threat to the very fabric of their state. A bombshell statement from the head of the Israeli Domestic Intelligence Service, Ronen Bar, revealed that Netanyahu pressured him to pledge personal loyalty. The implications of this moment are profound, raising alarms about democratic collapse within the occupying state. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is pressing Moscow for a clear response to his call for a ceasefire, focusing on sparing civilian infrastructure. Russian President Vladimir Putin has signaled openness to direct peace talks, while European and American leaders gather in London to explore diplomatic avenues to end the war. I'm Henny Saif. Let's get in focus. The Times of Israel has reported that opposition leaders in Israel have accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of endangering the state's security in existence, following explosive claims by the Chief of Internal Intelligence Service, Ronen Bar. In a court filing, Bar stated that Netanyahu demanded his personal loyalty over allegiance to the Supreme Court during a potential constitutional crisis. He said he was fired for refusing to protect Netanyahu's aides from investigation and for not helping the Prime Minister avoid testifying in his corruption trial. The newspaper added that in response, opposition leaders Yair Lapid, Benny Gantz and others issued a joint statement declaring Netanyahu's actions a threat to Israel's future. They announced plans for joint political action and called for an emergency Knesset session. And for more analysis, we are joined from Cairo by Mr. Saeed Akesh, the Israeli affairs expert at the Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies. Mr. Akesh, welcome to In Focus. In light of the Chief of Israel's Internal Intelligence Service, Ronen Bar's statement to the Supreme Court that Netanyahu attempted to pressure him into pledging personal loyalty and misusing security powers, how do you interpret his statement and this level of misusing power by Netanyahu?
I don't think it's a new thing for Israel. There has always been disagreements in Israel among security and political leaders and also among military leaders in what's known as the civil-military conflict in Israel, and it's an old case. And Netanyahu will not be the only hero of this theatrics. There has always been differences between the security bodies regarding certain strikes and operations that had been rejected by the security bodies, and they was achieved anyway. And in all cases, I don't think these claims will be very influential regarding Netanyahu's future, because he will announce the date of his resignation, and the Supreme Court has demanded the government to negotiate the resignation date of Netanyahu.
Well, Yair Golan, the leader of the Democrats Party, said that the statement is not just a warning but a criminal indictment. Now, from a political point of view, what does this suggest about the current strength and structure of the Israeli political institutions under Netanyahu?
We are seeing initial accusations. The procedures for Netanyahu to stand before the court will take a long time. The charges that Netanyahu is facing currently has been standing since 2019, and so far the judiciary did not process it for 2 years. These accusations might be right or wrong. They only reflect the political crisis inside Israel due to the war situation, and I don't think it will turn into a real trial except with a proof. For the court to take this testimony, he has to prove that it really happened. The testimony of Ronenbohr included two parts. The one was announced in the media and another was confidential. So what we are depending on is what he said in the confidential session, and this will define the fate of these charges.
Mr. Rakesh, please stay with us because we will go live now to Washington, D.C., where the State Department Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt is holding a media briefing. Let's watch.
Should be lower. He believes Americans should be able to borrow money cheaper than they currently are right now. And I also spoke to Kevin Hassett about the Fed as well, and he has called into question the Fed's independence and whether they are actually doing things, again, out of the best interest of the economy, or are they doing it for partisan reasons. The president wants to see interest rates lower. He has made that quite clear.
We've also seen, if I may, I'm sorry, one more, Caroline, just about, I said two economic questions, about the dollar. We've seen the dollar at multi-year lows versus the euro and other currencies around the world. Is it the administration's policy for a strong dollar? How does it view the dollar versus other currencies around the world?
The president wants to see the dollar remain as the world's reserve currency for our long-term fiscal stability and our economic growth. He's been quite clear about that. Sure.
Two questions.
And then to the woman behind you, who I haven't seen before. Welcome. Go ahead, Mary.
Earth Day and then the Supreme Court, if that's okay.
That's right. It's Earth Day.
Yes.
Happy Earth Day, everyone.
I saw the president truthing about the garbage pileup from China in the Pacific, and then I believe Lee Zeldin is headed to San Diego to investigate the pile of sewage from Mexico. Can you speak to what the White House has planned for Earth Day and anything in that arena?
Sure. I do have points from the EPA. Administrator Zeldin's doing a fantastic job, and they are always sharing their accomplishments with the White House, which we very much appreciate. He will be traveling, I believe he's in California today, for sewage situation. Here you go. Administrator Zeldin met with his Mexican counterpart to discuss steps Mexico needs to take to ensure the water entering the United States is clean and safe. And he's holding a press conference in San Diego today with elected officials and local stakeholders on the Tijuana River sewage crisis. I would also add from the president himself, he has always maintained he wants America to have the cleanest air and the cleanest water. And we want to do what's right for our environment and for our earth. And a lot of that is making sure that we have clean and sustainable energy, and we know that we produce natural gas cleaner and more efficiently than any country in this world, and the president wants to see that continue.
Thank you. And then on the Supreme Court, I know the court is hearing a case dealing with parents who don't want their kids having to read gender ideology books in schools. Can you comment on that case and what the Trump administration hopes to see come from that?
Sure. We hope the Supreme Court will do the right thing, and the president has been very clear. He stands on the side of parental rights, and he believes strongly that parents should have a greater say in their children's education and the content, if you will, that children are being exposed to in our public system. Sure. Go ahead.
Caroline, thank you.
Hi.
I'm Carolina Lumetta with World News Group. The administration ended some temporary protections for Afghans, including several hundred Christians who have been punished by the Taliban. Is the president considering any exceptions for Afghans who could face death or torture if they return to their home country?
So let's just be clear about one thing. We didn't end that proactively. It expired, and it's because the previous administration illegally paroled millions of people, or hundreds of thousands of people, I'm sorry, into the country, and then gave them temporary protective status, which again is a temporary status. It's not a permanent status in this country. And if there are individuals here who came in through the Biden administration who want to claim asylum, there is a legal process to do that, and those cases will be adjudicated by a judge on a case-by-case basis. We have a legal immigration process in this country for a reason, and all this administration is trying to do is effectuate that. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. I have two questions for you
Sure.
on immigration. March deportation were down slightly from the same period last year. SCOTUS recently ordered a pause on deporting Trinidad Tobago members with the Alien Enemies Act. I'm curious what other tools the administration is looking at to boost deportations.
Sure. Well, we are obviously complying with the court's order. However, the temporary pause, the Supreme Court basically said sit tight and they will follow up with an order, and we're confident that the Supreme Court will rule on the side of law and recognize the president absolutely has the executive authority to deport foreign terrorists from our nation's interior under the Alien Enemies Act. We feel very strongly about that, and we're confident the courts will side with the president and his executive authority. As for deportations, we continue to deport illegal criminals under Title VIII, which is an immigration authority given to our Border Patrol agents and Department of Homeland Security to deport illegal criminals from this country, and the administration continues to do that at record speed as quickly as they can with the resources that they have.
They recently dropped charges against the MS-13 leader caught in Woodbridge, Virginia, with the idea that this will expedite the deportation process. Does the administration plan to drop charges against other criminal illegals to speed along the deportation?
Obviously, that's within their purview, and I can't speak for them. However, it is our goal to deport as many illegal criminals and aliens from our country as we possibly can, as quickly as we can. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. We've heard so much about the president mentioned it himself before, but I don't think we've ever heard on the record what he hopes to achieve in Saudi Arabia and what the purpose of the trip is.
Sure. Well, the president looks forward to this. It was supposed to be his first foreign visit, but of course now he is going to Rome this weekend to honor the Pope and the funeral. The president looks to strengthen the ties between countries in which he will be visiting. He'll be having many bilateral meetings and talks, and we look forward to the trip and hope to see many of you there.
And the meetings in London this week, do they have any nexus with the plans in Saudi Arabia?
I can't speak to that. However, I do have an update on meetings when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine war. I was just in the Oval Office with the President, Steve Witkoff, and they wanted everybody to know that the negotiations continue. We feel, again, we're hopefully moving in the right direction, and the special envoy, Steve Witkoff, will be heading to Russia again later this week to continue talks with Vladimir Putin.
Is that why Rubio is not heading to London? Is he accompanying Witkoff to Moscow?
I can't speak for the Secretary of State's travel schedule. I'd defer you to the Department of State.
And more broadly, just about the peace agreement, the talks that are ongoing.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Caroline Leavitt, the spokesperson from the White House in Washington, D.C. She mentioned and acknowledged a few topics. The presidential trip to Saudi Arabia. It was supposed to be President Donald Trump's first visit. However, he will be going to Rome to honor the late Pope Francis I. They also spoke about the value of the dollar, which is at an all-time low, but she emphasized that President Donald Trump will be working on making the US dollar the main foreign currency reserves around the world. Also spoke about the sewage crisis. Today is Earth Day, and they spoke about the situation in Mexico, making sure that the water coming from Mexico into the United States is clean, fresh water. She spoke about the parental say in the public educational system, public schools in the U.S. Also, she spoke about the asylum seekers from Afghanistan and the status of the protection they were getting as a temporary protection under the previous Biden administration. However, asylum seekers will have to go through the official procedures for asylum seekers, and in turn spoke about the aliens, the enemies, and how they are still going through with this. Ladies and gentlemen, we continue our discussion with Mr. Saeed Aukesha, the Israeli affairs expert at Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies. Mr. Aukesha, now, Lapid says that Netanyahu is a danger to Israel's security. Given the ongoing genocide in Gaza and the global outrage at Israel's conduct, could this internal opposition be an attempt to redirect or reframe international perception of the occupying state and maybe even more importantly the course of the war on Gaza?
I don't think so, because we're talking about one side to the Israeli society adopting such views, but we shouldn't forget that there is a large segment of the Israeli society supporting Netanyahu and supporting the war against Gaza and supporting the starvation taking place there, and also supporting ignoring the international community or any orders from the United States. So there is disagreement in Israel, but Netanyahu is not receiving such outrages as portrayed in the media. He has faced similar challenges before, but none of which led to his overthrow. But he wasn't deprived in the Knesset of the confidence. So far, he can be overthrown if with a court order. He can be deprived of practicing political action, but that is not happening. This is the only way Netanyahu can be removed from his position. Regarding the logical, and it's a usual language inside Israel, exchanging accusations between the far right and the far left.
Mr. Saeed Aukesha, yes, I'll have to cut you off. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Saeed Aukesha, the Israeli affairs expert at Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies. Thank you very much, sir, for your insights. Now moving on to the recent developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. As both sides signaled openness to direct peace negotiations, US President Donald Trump recently announced that Russia and Ukraine could do big business with the United States if they reach a peace deal within the next week. According to the Kiev Independent, business interests have played a central role in Trump's approach to both Russia and Ukraine. For instance, his administration has pushed for close economic ties with Moscow and is negotiating a minerals deal with Kiev that would grant the US broad control over Ukraine's natural resources in exchange for military aid. Trump's remarks come shortly after he threatened to withdraw US support from the peace process if either side stalls the negotiations. And for more analysis, we're joined from Kiev by Mr. Ivan Rus, the advisor at the Ukraine National Center. Welcome, Mr. Rus. Now, Zelensky has asked Moscow for a clear response to Ukraine's proposal to avoid targeting infrastructure. Given Putin's stated openness to direct peace talks, how significant is this shift in tone from both sides?
Greetings to studio and all audience. Of course, we should understand simple facts that in previous periods, Russian officials tried to say that Zelensky is a legitimate person and who should be substituted. There should be election, and only after that, Russia is ready to talk. Now we see that President Putin say that okay, he is ready to talk with President Zelensky. As for me, it's the reflection on the statement of the United States, Donald Trump, who said that you should need to talk immediately because I lost patience. Donald Trump pressed on Ukraine, but on the other hand, he said a very interesting phrase several weeks ago that if he will think that Russia don't want peace, he imposed the tariffs from 25 to 50% for products of all countries that purchasing oil from Russia. It means serious pressure on Russian partners, and Russian partners will think how to substitute Russia in the oil market, and for Russia it's important. That's why Russia really demonstrates readiness to talk. But one thing, it's readiness to talk, and the horse of another color to do something. You know, we have something like 30 days truce during this period of after proposition of US. Then it was a so-called Easter ceasefire that President Putin announced. But when I talked with militaries from Ukrainian side and asked them whether it was peace, they said to me, no. Russia attacked Ukraine, not so many times like before. Nevertheless, it was not a truce and it was not a ceasefire, at least. That's why now, on the one hand, we understand that everyone afraid, let's call it so, everyone afraid Donald Trump, okay? And on the other hand, we understand that Russia still want to win this war, and Ukraine is not ready to recognize that some territories annexed by Russia since 2014 will be Russia. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Us, Zelensky emphasized the importance of unconditional ceasefire talks. Now, in your view, what does Zelensky mean by unconditional, and could it have the opposite effect on Vladimir Putin's openness to having ceasefire talks?
Actually, about unconditional requirement, it comes from the US proposition for the 30 days ceasefire, when Ukraine said that there should be no conditions from Russia. Russia immediately tried to say that, oh no, we have conditions, and try to say that we need to decrease quantity of Ukrainian army, we need to stop military support of Ukraine, and so on and so forth. That's why Ukraine said that, okay, let's make this ceasefire, but without conditions. So Ukraine will not decrease quantity of its soldiers. Ukraine will not stop mobilization of people, and Ukraine still will receive the support from our allies who give to us weapons. Yes, United States of America on the one hand is not giving a new package of support, but on the other hand, we know that the previous packages that was supported by previous President Biden, Ukraine will receive it approximately till the middle of this year, till the end of June or so. So that's why we have the support, and what will be after that, we will see. But as for me, as taking into account the direct statement of the United States of America, Europe should be more oriented on military production on its sphere, because really they should play more role, as Donald Trump said before. Because the war not in America, the war in...
Sir, the European and American officials are gathering in London this week after last week's Paris meeting. What are you expecting from this meeting in terms of influencing the direction of the war or ending it?
You know, honey, actually, I think that this meeting, first of all, it's a attempt of the United States of America to say that, guys, either you go on the peace according to actually our proposition, or we will not participate in this war, at least not play active role. I think that the future, that US will not be active player, and it's a direct statement to Europe. Europe, you should pay more attention to support Ukraine. You should pay more attention on military production in your countries. It will be very hard for Ukraine during at least half a year, but who knows what will be after, because Ukraine at least need time to win time till the end of this year, because Russian economy, as for me, is not so good, and that's why I think that the result of these meetings that will start tomorrow will be the official US statement that we will not be participate in this process. So every support of Ukraine depends on Europe, and not only on Europe, because we know that Japan,
Yes.
Turkey support us. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Ivan Uz, the advisor at Ukraine National Center, thank you very much, sir, for your insights. Hopefully, the openness and the change of attitude between both the Russian and Ukrainian side could be a fruitful one and would prosper into a permanent ceasefire for this conflict. And obviously, the broader political fragmentation in Israel, could it lead to any shift in the balance of power within the occupying state? We will be watching and waiting to see the developments of this story as well. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this episode of In Focus. Until next time, stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.